All right, now let us look at chapter 2, and that's administration of taxes. So, what are the learning objectives of this chapter? So, by the end of this chapter, you should be able to explain the administration of tax, explain the powers of the Commissioner General, explain who is responsible for the administration of taxes, explain the exceptions to the secrecy rule, and explain the way to which notices are communicated. So those are the learning objectives of this chapter. So let us start with looking at what is the introduction, or what we will look at in this chapter. So this chapter will consider the administrative arrangements that are in place to facilitate tax administration. So we want to look at those administrative arrangements that are there when it comes to administering taxes in Malawi. Then we also consider the MRA. The MRA. We cannot talk about tax administration without talking about the Malawi Revenue Authority. So the MRA as the main body in the administration of taxes, and in terms of the setup, the leadership, the powers of the Commissioner General, the requirements to observe secrecy on the part of officers, and communication of taxpayers. So basically, that's what we're going to look at in this chapter, right? We'll look at the MRA, who's on top, the leadership structure. What are the powers of the Commissioner General, right? What are requirements in terms of observing the secrecy rule? And basically, what are the communication channels to taxpayers? Right. Now, let's start off by looking at the MRA, the Malawi Revenue Authority, right? As a taxman, you'd want to work at this institution, right? We cannot talk about tax without talking about the MRA. So, the MRA is an agency of the government, right? Responsible for assessment, collection, and counting for tax revenue. So it is a government agency, right? It is part of the government, right? It is part of the government. So it is a government agency that is responsible for assessing. That's the first thing. How much tax are you supposed to pay? That's assessing, right? Collection, taking the money from the taxpayer and accounting for this tax revenue. How much have we collected? Right? Have we hit the targets? Right? That's being accountable for the tax collection. So basically, these are the three things that MRA as an agency of the government does. Assessment of tax, how much are you supposed to pay? Collection, right, as it states, and accounting for the tax collected. Right. So basically, that's the MRA, right? Malawi Revenue Authority. So the MRA was established by an Act of Parliament 1998 and was launched in February 2000, right? So, like any other parastatal, because MRA is also a parastatal or a state-owned company, sort of, right? State-owned company, right? Has to come into existence by passing an act of the parliament. Parliamentarians have to meet and agree that we want to establish a government agency responsible for this particular item, right? So, in 1998, parliamentarians came together and passed this bill, and it became an act that the MRA, a government agency, should be set up to do the assessment, the collection, and accounting for tax revenue in Malawi. But actually, after passing it in 1998, it was now launched as a company, as a parastatal, as a government agency in 2000 on February. Right. So it was formed to improve the functions previously carried by the Department of Custom and Excise and Income Tax in the Ministry of Finance. So one would ask that prior to 1998, right? That's basically 1998 or prior to 2000 when it was launched. Do you mean that there was no body that was collecting tax? No, the answer is no. There was a department, right, in the Minister of Finance, which was responsible for that, right? And that department was called the Department of Custom and Excise and Income Tax. So you would just have basically a department in the Minister of Finance, right? Minister of Finance, right? So I feel like its powers, right, or its functionality was limited, right? For that reason, they thought of incorporating a state-owned company or an agency called the MRA, right? So the MRA is a standalone company, I would state a parastatal, right? A standalone agency, right? A standalone agency, right? It has its own managers and whatnot, right? So that's why the MRA was formed, right? To basically improve the functions that were previously done by a department in the Ministry of Finance, right? By the by the what? By the a department that was the department under the Ministry of Finance. But all in all, the Ministry of Finance still, right? In other words, the MRA as a parastatal is still under the Ministry of Finance, right? Although it's not a department, but still it's under this Ministry of Finance, right? This Ministry of Finance. Right. Let us look at the structure of the MRA, right? Let us understand the structure of MRA as a parastatal. So the MRA, right, the Malawi Revenue Authority, a government agency, right, is basically going to be overseen by a board. There is a board of directors that oversees the day-to-day, rather the running of this government agency. So we have the board of directors. The board of directors oversees what happens in MRA, right? So we know that a formation of a board, we have executive directors and non-executive directors, right? Overall, it was overseen by this, right? In this board, right? In this board, the Commissioner General is the one that heads this board. And he is an executive director because he is sort of the CEO of this government agency, right? In other words, the big boss of MRA is called the Commissioner General. In other words, the person, right, who is heading the MRA is called the Commissioner General, the CG, right? The CG. So we have the MRA. We know that it is overseen by a board of director, but independently, it is run on a daily basis by this person called the Commissioner General. The Commissioner General. He's sort of the CEO of Malawi Revenue Authority, right? So this guy is basically dealing with providing leadership, strategic direction, and control, right? He is the one that is giving leadership, right? Strategic direction and control in coherence with the board of directors. He works hand in hand with the board of directors, but on a day-to-day running of the business, right? We're seeing the Commissioner General running the government agency, right? So, in pursuance of these duties, right, and to accomplish the mandate of MRA, the functional departments and divisions are in place, right? So we cannot just have an MRA running as a whole, right? We have different functions, different departments, right, to make sure that the MRA is able to achieve its duties and accomplish its mandates, right? So we have a number of departments, right? A number of departments. So we have the MRA headed by the CG, the Commissioner General, and we have three major departments. We have customs, but these customs called exports, right? Then we also have custom, import. Then we have domestic tax department, right? Or division. So we have three major divisions, right? Three major divisions, right? Under the MRA, right? After this, we also have functions that fall under this, right? We also have functions that fall under this, and these are called supporting functions, and we'll look at them. So, right, we're saying that there are three revenue, right, divisions. We have the customs division, the import, right, looking at everything coming in. The customs division, export, looking at everything going out. And we have the domestic tax division, looking at taxes happening right here in Malawi, or activities happening right here in Malawi. So it has also supporting divisions, as I stated earlier, right? Namely the finance. We know every company has to have a finance division, right? Finance division, right? Then we also have the administration division, right? We also have the human resources division. Employment of people happens at the human resource division. We have the legal, right? Because it will need to have lawyers and whatnot, right? We also have the ICT department. With the advancement of technology, we know that technology is at the key of any division, right? We also have the tax investigation department. We have the policy planning and research, the corporate affairs, internal audit, supply chain management, internal affairs, and modernization. So these are the supporting department falling under the three major revenue divisions at the MRA. So in other words, all of these departments were falling under all these divisions. So we know we have the finance, we have the legal, we have the HR, ICT, and so on and so forth. All these are helping these three main divisions, right? They are helping these three main divisions. All right. So let us look at the customs department. We know that the customs has the input side and the export side, right? So they administer and enforce the customs and exercise, right? So in other words, these two departments, the export and the import custom divisions, are enforcing the customs and exercise, right? As we were starting, the course, we looked at some of the acts that we're looking at in this chapter, right? In this syllabus, we said that another one is the custom and exercise, right? Custom and exercise act. So this act is being administered by these two departments, right? While the divisions collect inputs and excess duties, exports, input VAT, and trade statistics. So these are the items that basically they are actually handling, right? They're handling inputs, they're handling excess duties, they're handling exports, they're handling input VATs, and they're also looking at trade statistics. Those are the things that these departments are looking at. Right. In addition, right, these divisions also facilitate trade and protection, right? From entry and exit of prohibited goods. Timazoea kuti timakhala ndi maboda muja mumakhalanso anthu a MRA. These MRA guys are making sure that prohibited goods do not go out of the country and do not go into the country. Awanga make sure kuti chamba chisapite banja, chisalowe nkati, or any other drugs, right? These departments are makhala bombo, right? Because they're actually located at the borders, right? We have Kumanza, we have Karonga, Chitipa, right? And so on and so forth, right? So basically, those are those two divisions, the export and import custom divisions. Now we also have the domestic tax division, right? This division actually administers the Taxation Act and also the VAT Act, right? The Taxation Act and also the VAT Act, right? The Value Added Tax Act, right? So the division collects direct income tax. That means kwambira payee, right? Payee and corporations, corporate tax, because we're saying that income tax from individuals and corporations. That means kwambira payee, corporate tax, all of them fall under income tax, right? These are in form of payee, right? Provision tax, fringe benefit tax, withholding tax. So we can see that the domestic tax looks at a broader tax, different taxes. We're looking at payee, provision tax, fringe benefit, right, and withholding, and so on and so forth. So the division also collects domestic VAT and the domestic excise. So it also looks at that as well, right? VAT that is happening right here, right? Like for example, if I'm selling something right here in Malawi, there's tax. These guys are also making sure that this VAT is collected, including what? Domestic excise. Anything to do with foreign, right? Import or export? No, they are not concerned with that. But they are concerned with anything happening right here in Malawi. So the MRA also has 3 regional offices, that is Blantyre, Lilongwe, and Zuzu. So in these 3 districts, we have the regional offices, right? We have the regional offices. But on top of that, we also have 32 other offices spread out across Malawi, from Sanje to Chitipa. You'll find an MRA office in Sanje, in Tibisba, in Karonga, right? They all have different offices, but the regional offices are only 3, right? Blantyre, it means that the southern region, Lilongwe, the central region, and Zuzu, the northern region. But we have offices across the country. That means probably in each district you might have. I don't know if in Neno have, not Neno, but Likoma has one, but I'm sure that it should have, each district should have an office. Now let us look at tax legislation. We know that without a law, without an act, right, taxes won't be in existence, because they are only existing because there was an act that was enacted, right? There was a law that was enacted. So let us look and understand the taxation legislation. When I talk about a legislation, in simple terms, it's just an act by the parliament. An act by the parliament, that's called a legislation, because a legislator is the parliamentarian, right? The other name of an MP is called a legislator. So if he makes the law, it's called a legislation, right? So the key taxes that MRA assesses, right, collects and accounts for are basically 3, right? These are the 3 taxes that MRA is actually involved in. The income tax, that means it's looking at corporate tax, payee, and so on, right? There's also the value added tax, right? And last, the custom and excess duty. So these are the 3 main or key taxes that the MRA is looking at. right? The three key taxes that the MRA is looking at. So each of these three main, right? Three main what taxes, right? There is a law for each. For example, if we are looking at the income tax, we might have a law for it. The VAT, we might have a law for it, and the custom, we might have a law for it. So the legislation governing these taxes can be found within the following chapters of the law in Malawi. For example, the first one, the income tax, will basically be governed by the Taxation Act. I think it's 2006, right? The Taxation Act 2006, if I'm not mistaken. When it comes to VAT, there's an act for it. It's called the VAT Act. And when you are looking at custom and excise duty legislation, it's basically the Customs and Excise Act. So we can see that under each key taxes that MRA actually is focusing on, it has its own tax. So we talked about the Commissioner General. Right? We talked about the Commissioner General being on top of the corporate ladder when it comes to the MRA. He's the big boss. He is the CEO of this revenue agency. Right. So let us understand who this person is. So we're saying that the Commissioner General is the person that is heading the MRA and is accountable to the minister on all issues under the MRA jurisdiction. Right? We looked at the term jurisdictions as just just meaning that it's sort of Mariri, right? Mariri, right? Or let me just say an area that it covers. That's jurisdiction. So we're saying that the Commissioner General, being the head of the MRI, is accountable to the minister. Which minister am I talking about? Not any other minister, but the minister of the ministry in which it is under, which is the Ministry of Finance. That means we're talking about the Minister of Finance. So the CG is accountable to the Minister of Finance, right? In all tax issues under his jurisdiction. It means that we're not talking about taxes in Malawi. He cannot be talking about taxes in Zambia because his jurisdiction ends around Malawi, right? His powers are just basically within Malawi. That's basically what to do with the Commissioner General. So he has his powers, he has his functions, right? Right. So let us look at the delegation of functions by the Commissioner General. Amakandi Zinchiro Zambiri. He cannot possibly do everything alone. So he has that power to delegate some of his functions to a person that he is actually directing, right? Or is under his control. So in order to efficiently and effectively fulfill the MRA's mandate, right? Which is basically, the mandate is basically to collect revenue for the government, right? The Act, which is Section 4, when I talk about the Act in this case, right, we're talking about the Taxation Act, not the VAT Act, not the Excise and Custom Act, but in this case, we're talking about the VAT, the Taxation Act, Section number 4, has empowered the Commissioner General of MRA to delegate the functions in writing to officers appointed to work under his control and direction at MRA. So all the employees of MRA, he can delegate. He can basically delegate his functions. Right? The CEO of MRA, who is the Commissioner General, has that power. That's basically it. There's also one thing that I forgot, right? To mention is to do with under the structure. After we have the MRA here, right? We have the CG under him, right? Under all these divisions, you have commissioners, not commissioner generals, but commissioners, right? His direct juniors are called commissioners. So for each of these divisions, 3 divisions, you have commissioners, right? Commissioners heading each division. I forgot to mention that. Each division has its own commissioner. But right now we're talking about the big boss, and this is the Commissioner General. So let us look at reports by the Commissioner General. What reports does the Commissioner General have to make, and to whom should they make it to? Right. So Section 5 of the Taxation Act requires that the Commissioner General should furnish the minister annually for presentation to the National Assembly a report on the working of the Act. So he has that mandate, he has that responsibility to make sure that he provides, because the term furnish just means to provide, right? Furnish, right, just means to provide. So he is mandated to provide to the minister. We were talking about the Minister of Finance, right? A report of how the act has been working. In other words, a report of how things have rolled over during the year. So he gives it to the Minister of Finance and annually, right? And the Minister of Finance is the one that will go and present it at the National Assembly, right? The National Assembly, right? So the Commissioner General, right, in his report that he is supposed to furnish every year to the minister, right, has to draw attention to any breaches or evasions of the act which came to his attention during the year at MRI. So included in this report that he's furnishing to the Minister of Finance in how the act has worked during the year, right? He also has to highlight in there, right, if there has been any evasions, right? Evasions is basically running away or to pay tax. For example, malamoti muduse usunge border mukadusa kuchine ni magale morano utansongo, right? You have to what? Make sure any breach of what? Breach of the law, right? Just to breach is just basically to do something not following the law, right? That's the breach of law. So all these have to be what? Put in the report, right? So that the Minister of Finance is aware of such. So basically, that's to do with reports by the Commissioner. We're seeing that he is mandated to give the Minister of Finance annually, right, a report on how the act has been working during the year, and also in his report make sure that he also includes any breach and evasions of the act during the year. So basically that's to do with that. Right. So let us look at the powers of the Commissioner General. I think we should stop there. We'll continue in the next video.